right. Yeah, let's fix this. It's a little too high. Oh my sweet boy, oil kisses. Okay. Welcome to FiberLoveDiary. It's Vlogmas 2021. Hi, Merry Vlogmas, how are you? I am so sorry about this glare. I still can't wear contacts, so I need to deal with it. But I really apologize. I really apologize. I just thought, let's answer some questions, and I'll work on John's sock this morning. It's still dark out. You can see, it's like 7, what time is it? It is 7:18. So, I don't know. I just thought there's so many questions lately and I can't really, I've been struggling to keep up with questions. You guys ask so much good stuff that I think probably a lot of other people want to hear or need to hear. But I need to start with one from last time that I didn't answer because, I don't know if you guys will remember, but I had to handwrite some questions and I missed one. I don't have the exact wording, but I think it was Chris T asked about how sometimes I ply off my hand. I call it the turkey hand. You get a 2-ply yarn. Basically what you're doing kind of is making a center pull ball that your hand's on the inside of so you can control the tension as it comes off your hand. And she asked, okay, so how does that work? Because aren't you getting one of the plies the wrong way, basically, because one of them is like upside down. So I thought really fast before I start knitting, I'd answer that one first. So I used to think this, I totally get why you think this. In my brain this makes sense, but I figured a visual aid is like pretty much the only way. Okay, so hang on, I'm drawing. This is me making some horrible art, but it will make sense. It'll be enough to make sense, you know, in the question. I drew you a strand of yarn. Also kind of looks like a really thick rope because I'm doing this really fast. But here's how it works, okay? This is actually your single and it's got different colors in it just so that you can see. Sometimes your singles do have different colors in this way, but it also looks like a plied yarn. It doesn't really matter because the point will be illustrated either way. So pretend this is your single. When you wrap it on your hand the way that I do, one side of the single, one end of the single ends up essentially like upside down. That's not exactly the right way, but turned around the other way. So you can see it's going from the Christmas tree lower corner up to the ceiling to the Santa or the angel picture over here, right? So you can see that when you turn it upside down and that single is like going the opposite way from the other end, you actually end up with the exact same thing. So it comes down from the Christmas tree corner and goes up to the angel picture. I understand why your brain tells you now one end of this is backwards, but you actually end up with them going the same direction. It's a crazy thing, but our brains seem to want to flip it this way when actually it's gonna flip this way, if that makes sense. I love that question. I'm sure you're not the only person who thought it. I thought it at first, and I don't remember exactly where I saw someone illustrate it with a picture, but I have seen this before just so that people can like see it, and then you really, your brain will still want to tell you that, but now you'll be able to override it because you'll know. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so let's just knit and answer some questions with my friend on my lap. He was all worked up because I was putting my makeup on and he's like, great, she's leaving. So now he wants to be a paperweight and make sure I can't go anywhere. Yes, that is my dog. So Linda Gerhardt asked, what are your thoughts regarding allowing the spun singles to rest before plying versus plying right after they've been spun? I've heard mixed things on this. We've talked about this a little bit. The fiber breed study videos seem to go right from spinning the singles directly to plying, or did you actually allow for resting? Thanks. Okay, let's knit. So that's a good question. We have talked about this a bit before. I personally do not allow singles to rest. on purpose, but sometimes I do because, you know, I'm just doing other things. I get distracted. I don't have time to ply right away. Sometimes I'm doing a huge project, so the ones at the beginning have time to rest and the ones at the end don't. I think that is kind of made up. The only time, so I do have to give that caveat, the only time I notice is that sometimes while you're plying, the singles will be kind of like twisty because they haven't had time to rest. Time to rest will solve that. But other than that, people use the word energy and talk about how, like, if it rests, it has time for the energy to settle down, go out of it. Energy doesn't work like that. I don't know if people like understand physics, but if something's releasing energy, it's in the form of heat, which is another type of energy. It doesn't release. Really, it's kind of like your hair. So, well, maybe not your hair, but it's kind of like my hair. So if I braid it and take the braid out right away, it doesn't hold the shape. But if I braid it and leave it in overnight, it'll hold that shape until, pretty much until I get it wet. That's just the way my hair is. The other part of it is, as soon as you get that yarn wet, when you put it in a bath, when you soak it or whatever, it is going to take on the shape and it's gonna set the shape that it's in at that moment. So whether it had a lot of energy before or not, once you get it wet, it's taking on the same shape. So my personal opinion is it does not matter unless it's so spun that it's like tangly or tangly is not the right, unless it's spun so tightly that it is hard to control. I don't feel the need to let it rest at all. I almost never do. It's very rare. And if I do, it's only because I don't have time to ply it right away. Because I'd rather ply it and get it off my wheel and get something new on. That's just how I am. And once I get it wet, it's gonna set in that shape, no matter how long I rested it, what I did. Okay, we've talked about that before though. All right, Danielle asked, okay, here's a question as a non-weaver. Is it possible to dip your toe in the waters of trying to weave without spending a ton or taking up a lot of space? Where would you start? Anything's possible, Danielle. There are some like sample kind of looms, but also like I think if you want to spend less and you also want to take up less space, rigid heddle is a really good way to go. And there are quite small ones, but also there are some tapestry looms that they're not exactly smaller, but they take up even less space because you can literally just like put them up against a wall inside a closet and they take up almost no space, or hang them on a wall. I would suggest if you're trying to just dip your toe in, you could try to look for one of those like on Craigslist. Shopgoodwill.com has them sometimes, but you don't get like the best deals there. All the fiber equipment for sale groups have them occasionally. But I have another suggestion on this, and some of you probably haven't even thought of it. So if you live in a community where, or even close to a community where there's a weaving guild, and they are all over the US, and I don't know about other countries. Do other countries have these? I would love it if you would weigh in the comments and let me know if other countries have weaving guilds. A lot of guilds have equipment that you can rent for very small fees, or educational materials too sometimes. Like they're about an hour from me, there is a guild that I haven't joined. Well, I did join for 1 year, but I haven't kept my membership up because they take the summer off, and the drive from here to there in the winter is a challenge because there's a lot of highway or expressway and then a lot of very open expressway. So if it's icy or snowy, it's really scary drive in the winter if it's bad. So I did not keep it up because I feel like it's just really hard when like 70% of the year that they are active could be really bad weathers. But they have a whole bunch of equipment that you can rent for like really affordable fees. I want to say there was a triangle loom and it was like $15 and you just could rent it until someone else wanted it. So it wasn't like even $15 a month. If you really want to dip your toe in, even if you do have to drive an hour each way, it might be worth it for you to try it out. Deba asked, hi Trish, I have a question. It says Deba. I'm weaving on rigid head loom. Can I weave with singles? And can you clarify singles versus plied homespun yarn? Somehow I always spin fine fingering. I've recently spun up merino silk blend. Oh, it's so sleek and I would like to weave this batch. Any suggestions on the best way? I do have some suggestions. So you said, can you clarify singles versus plied homespun yarn? I am not 100% sure what you are asking, but singles are what you spin straight off your roving where it's just one ply of the yarn. That's a single. And then plied homespun yarn would mean you had multiple singles or a single that you wound around and used 2 or more plies of it to make a yarn. And usually, not usually, pretty much all the time you spin it when you ply it the opposite direction that you spun the singles. So that's the difference between those two. It does make it stronger when you ply it. It does other things too. I don't really use singles very often. And the reason I don't is because, how do I explain this? They don't wear as well in a couple different ways. They also can tend to bias. That's more of a like, how tightly did you spin them? Biasing means once it's in a fabric, it could be knit, it could be woven. The fact that the twist in the yarn only goes one way instead of being balanced out by twisting the single and then plying it, and so balancing the twist out a little bit, the fact that it only goes one way will tend, especially if the twist is a little tighter, to want to pull a stitch or a woven square a little bit reverse of the plied tension. If the yarn is twisted this way, as it just sits in a fabric, it's gonna want to pull, let me think now, it's gonna want to pull this way. Yeah, I think, because that twist is not balanced. So I don't really like it. Now, when you soak it, you can help take some of that away and set it in the shape and it won't want to as much, but I feel like getting that perfect balance is a little bit tricky. Not that it can't be done, it totally can be done. But on top of that, this is the reason why I don't wanna even work towards that or do that. The more you ply them, the more you twist them together, the better they're going to wear. And then also the less pilly they're gonna get. Every time you add plies, every time you make the surface of what is sort of sticking out or available smaller because all the plies are lying on top of each other, they're twisting together, you're making the exposed surface of each single smaller. That gives it less opportunity for those fibers to pull out and pill. So that was a long description to explain that I don't usually use singles. I'm sure some of you guys have noticed I almost never use singles. That is personal preference, 100%. Tons of people do it. My only suggestion is if you're gonna do it for weaving, use it for weft. They're not as strong. They're never gonna be as strong as a plied yarn of the same fibers, and you won't see biasing if you use them for warp also until it's too late and your fabric comes off the loom and you thought it was like this and it's actually like a diamond instead of a square, if that makes sense. So if you really feel like you want to use it for the weft. And I am sorry if I gave you bad news or made you afraid to do it. Just because I don't like to do it, as I said recently, there's no rules. So if you want to do it, just do it. Go for it and try it. Because the worst thing that happens is you have to, you know, use that fabric for something different than you originally planned, or it comes out looking different, but it could be the coolest thing you ever made. So don't let my opinion, that's all it is, affect how you use it. but it probably isn't strong enough for warp. It's not very frequent that it's strong enough for warp. Somebody had questions about a first sweater, and she was saying that she recommends a toddler or teddy bear sweater for a first sweater. And then at the end, she said, I know you don't want to specify your favorite fibers. I know you don't want to specify your favorite fibers for sock yarns, but some guidance would be greatly appreciated by the spinner. Just which fibers and or blends are most suitable and why. So again, this is opinions, but I really don't care about softness when it comes to socks. John doesn't care at all. I mean, he would take the prickliest socks you could ever find. I think what makes a good one is durability isn't the only factor that I think about, because I've talked about this before. I love to knit socks, and I knit a lot of socks every year, and I don't really mind if they wear out. But I don't want them to wear out like in a month. I mean, that's crazy. Durability is a factor. Also, how quickly it's gonna felt is a factor. That's one of the reasons why I've seen a lot of people talk about BFL for socks, and I don't use it for socks anymore. I have tried it. My mom has a couple pairs, at least 3 pairs of BFL socks, and they felt. So something that I can wear and wash without felting makes a difference for me. Personally, I just went through the sock extravaganza, first 4 breeds. All of those passed the test so far anyway, and so that's Dorset, horn or down, and also South Down. The South Down turned out so great, and then Cheviot all did well washing in cold in the washing machine. You probably saw. Those are 4 that I like. There are plenty more though that could be really great, and we're probably going to do 4 more in 2022. Vicky K said, ugh, bless you, Vicky. I don't know why I guess this isn't a question, but I thought it bears repeating. Vicky K said, nothing is ever quite as simple or easy or fast as shown on TV or YouTube. 100%, 100%. We were just recently talking about this on one of the lives on Sunday where we craft together about, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, how when I warp my loom, I use kind of like a hybrid of techniques, and one of the people I learned from was Barbara Elkins, and she she wound a warp on a warping board. Of course, right now I'm using a mill, and I love the mill. And she literally, as she's yanking, cranking it onto the back beam, she is literally smoothing it like with her thumbs like this. And I'm like, it does not work that way with me. I have to like detangle it before I can smooth it every single time. And I keep trying to find a method where I don't have to do that, and I have to do it every time. And I said in the group, I was like, wait, are people just not showing this? Because in her video, everything looks so perfectly lined up. I don't know why I can't get it like that. Maybe it just takes practice. But I appreciated Vicky's comment so much, because it's so true that things are just never as simple as they look on YouTube. And I haven't really shown that warping method because I don't feel like I should be demonstrating things that don't work as well as I guess I don't feel like I should be demonstrating things that are super frustrating. Maybe I should be. Maybe one of you would have a great suggestion on how I can do it better and not have that problem. So I don't know, maybe next time I will. I really wanted to get another set of Christmas towels done, but I don't think they'll be done in time for Christmas unless would I? I really want to so badly. I found another draft that I really want to modify and try out, but I don't know if it's gonna, maybe it'll happen in Vlogmas. It'd make a good video, right? Danielle H. Okay, an opinion question for someone just learning to knit. Oh, opinions. Would it be better to try a sock pattern that calls for circular needles or DPNs, trying to decide what to buy? I seem to be in the minority when it comes to knitting socks with DPNs. I love DPNs. I will use them to knit hats that other people would use a circular for, or sleeves that other people would use like magic loop or circular or whatever. Which one of those methods are you more comfortable with in your regular knitting? So do you use DPNs and feel comfortable with them? The reason I'm okay with them is because, I mean, you can see it's no different. It's no different from knitting with straights or circs, because right now I'm knitting with 2 points and the other ones are just hanging there. They're totally nothing to do with what I'm actually doing. What are you most comfortable with already in your normal everyday knitting? Are you a magic looper? Are you okay with DPNs? Would you prefer a circular? I would suggest that whatever you feel the most comfortable with up to this point in your knitting, you try that first. If you don't like one, keep trying. You will find one that works if you keep trying. Don't give up if the first one doesn't work. I did not get the name on this one. I'm sorry, I don't know how I did that. How do the prep methods relate to each other time-wise? At what point does an electric drum carder seem worth the expense? I know it's different for everyone, but some considerations would be great. Lovely wool. Okay, so this was about the Finn fleece that I washed and then sampled 3 different prep techniques. So, okay, how do the prep methods relate to each other time-wise? I flicked some, I combed some, and I carded some. Personally, I think the carding is the fastest, and then the combing, and then the flicking, although those two are not that far off each other. And it says, at what point does an electric drum carder seem worth the expense? So the reason why I like an electric is because it allows you to be carding something, whatever you've just picked or set up to go into the carder, while you set up the next thing or pick the next bit of fleece or whatever. So when I bought my electric ones, I was processing a lot of fleece that I washed myself from the beginning. And so most of those, pretty much all of those, need to be picked before they can run through a carder. Just each lock needs to be pulled apart more loosely. If you run them through as a full washed lock, you end up just getting all these chunky. You have to run it through way more times to get it nice and smooth. So the picking makes a huge difference. I think it was the last live we talked about a picker. I'm scared of pickers because I am afraid they're gonna tear up a fine fleece, but that's a mental thing. Like, I haven't tried one, so I don't really know, but I look at them and I'm like, how could that not tear up a fleece, right? I'm gonna hand pick. For me, it makes a lot of sense, but also I love having that giant one when I'm gonna make a big bat or when I'm gonna blend something. So if I'm gonna blend a lot of fibers, the really big one makes a lot of sense. With an electric one, either you can pick a whole bunch of locks, or you can set up a bunch of colors to feed in or a bunch of fibers to feed in, and then work on what you're gonna do next as it feeds in. So it does save me some time. Where is that line where it becomes something that you need is not the right word. I agree that's different for everyone. And I think it's just like, how much time do I want to save versus the money? There are many things that I'll just do rather than spend the money on them, because time I have and money I don't at that moment, if that makes sense. So I think that line is one you have to define yourself, but that is the reason why I like the motorized ones. I have to be honest, one of the best carders I ever had was an Ashford standard carder that was a crank carder. It worked so great. It was just little. I probably can only get 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces on it at a time. So it was awesome though. Julie said, okay, this is recent, about my eye appointment. She said, we need your eyes to be super sparkly and working as well as possible. So I thought I would quick tell you guys what happened. I have to go back and have the exam where they dilate my eye so he can really see the whole surface inside and look at the retina, not on a flat picture. But my readings for the glaucoma test were high, and he did them twice, and they were actually higher the second time, which I don't know how they could change so much. Kind of confusing. The eye doctor did say that because I have astigmatism, I could get a falsely high reading because they're those machines are calibrated for a normal cornea, and mine because of my eye shape, the whole situation, my eye could just have an unusual thickness of cornea. So on top of that, they did the flat picture of inside my eye. I don't know how much you guys are going to know about this. Some of you will know a lot about it. And everything does look okay there. There is one area that he said, I can't see well enough to know for sure, but I want to see it better. So I guess you would call it concerning. I'm more scared than I probably should be. John was like, no, I'm not worried at all, but I'm kind of scared. So, but there's nothing I can really do about that. Right now anyway, I have to go back when my new contacts come in, and I told him I would do the exam with the dilation so that he can see better. She also said, okay, I'll be over for dinner because the shells look amazing. So I don't use a recipe for those. When I was growing up, my grandma my dad's mom used to come and stay with us for like months at a time. She didn't really live with us, but she kind of like moved to my uncle's house and our house and then her own apartment for like months at a time. So she did stay with us months at a time, and she did a lot of the cooking when she was with us because my mom was in school full-time and then later working full-time. And so I have never used recipes really, but those, I didn't eat those. That wasn't dinner. John took those with him to his brother's on his trip. His brother's a bachelor. Hey, nothing wrong with that, but I always know if I send food, first of all, he appreciates it, which is really nice. And then also, it means they're not gonna eat Arby's or pizza for one meal. I try to always send something. He left last time on the day after Clarksgiving and took a bunch of leftovers with him. He did take food last time too. Normally I'll make like sometimes a lot of food, but this time it wasn't tons. He was only going for a couple days. And he also took almost all the cookies. He left a few here for himself when he gets home. But thank you. I'm so glad they looked good to you. They are like eggs, ricotta, Parmesan, garlic. I'm trying to think what else is in there. Some basil. That's probably it in the filling. And I just fill those boiled shells. I use jarred sauce for this, which is not something I usually do. I usually make my own. I have tons of bags of frozen tomatoes from my garden, and I usually make my own sauce. But when I do a dish like that, I have a favorite jarred sauce, and that's what I use. So it's really easy. I cook the sausage, put it on there. It's Italian sausage, usually mild, sometimes hot, just depends on who's gonna eat it. But I'm so glad a couple of you guys commented on how good it looked. So thank you. I do know how to cook. I did not get this body by not knowing how to cook or eat. But you know what? Hey, this body does a lot. So, okay, N2 Weaving asked, I noticed you use DPNs for socks. Do you ever do magic loop? I would think it would be much easier to match socks if you do 2 at a time with magic loop. What is your experience? So I don't usually try to match them, but if I do, I don't think it's harder or easier. It's pretty much, I don't know, the same, no matter which way, how I do it. I just make sure I start casting on in the exact same place, and then they'll match. Yes, I have done magic loop, and yes, I have done 2 at a time. I do not care for it. I don't like dropping the yarn and picking it back up over and over and over again. I also don't, magic loop is just not my favorite. Maybe it's because I didn't practice enough or try to get the muscle memory enough, but I feel like when I do magic loop, I spend more time wrangling the cord of the needles around than I actually spend knitting. Chris T asked, how many stitches did you cast on? This was for John's sock. Actually, that was for this sock. Also, can we just appreciate how this is coming along? It's quite pretty. 72 for John. Eileen Reinsberger said, so cool. Oh, this is about the same video, the sock blank video. Now I want to find someone with a knitting machine to make some no nylon sock blanks, or does anyone know where we can buy those in the UK? So I posted about this in the Facebook group because I knew we had other people in Europe and in the UK in that group that might be able to help Eileen find one, and they did. So I guess if you are interested in that, hop into that group and do a quick search on the post because I cannot remember the name. They're named something different there. In the US, you would be looking for Addy Express, I think it's called, or a Centro machine. They're round, but you can put like a little stopper in that'll make it go around and stop and then come back. You just got to switch the way you're cranking, and you can make a flat one or you can just make a round one. Some people make them round and then unravel them that way. Lori M asked, do you have a favorite sock pattern? I keep forgetting to ask. So I have a couple favorites. I hardly ever make one more than once. But that said, I have made a few more than one time. I really like Viking socks. I'll link a few of them below. I really like boyfriend socks. I really like Viking socks. There's one from a pattern book that I've knit a couple times. I love one called Angler's Loop, I think it's called. I've knit that a couple times. I gotta go get something to answer the last question. All right. So last question, I needed to go grab something to answer. Kimberly Dillon asked, did you use all the yarn? So she's talking about the Christmas tree yarn. Here, I'm gonna put on your sweater. Or is there enough for a little shrub that's so beautiful and so creative? He's like, why? Luther was shivering every single day because it was so chilly. So I used the rest of it to make him the sweater. Isn't it so cute? I put it with some gray, I put it with some gray leftover Cascade 220 merino, and it turned out so darn cute, isn't it? It didn't matter, the snow goat bug. So yeah, I did have a little left over. I probably could have made a shrub, but instead I made the cutest boy in the world a sweater, which PS he hates. But during that time when it was so cold outside and he had just gotten a haircut, he was like bringing me his coat to put it on him, and he wore his coat at night a few nights. Oh no, baby. So that's what I did with the rest. I don't know what I'm doing for the rest of the day. Happy Vlogmas. I hope you're having fun. I am actually having fun. I was I was stressed about not being able to get it all done and edited and uploaded and everything. But so far, it's been okay. I hope you're having a great holiday season, and thanks. I love you. Bye.